The morning of June 14th, 2347, started like every other day on the alien observation station floating high above Earth. Commander, a tall creature with green scales covering his body, sat in his chair and looked at the daily reports. He had been watching Earth for 3 years now. To him, it was a boring job. The humans below were interesting creatures, yes, but they were primitive. They had only recently learned to use fusion power. They were like children playing with simple toys, while the rest of the galaxy had moved far beyond such things. Yawned and stretched his long arms. Another quiet day, he thought. Another day of watching the little humans go about their little lives. Then every alarm in the station began to scream. Myra, the young sensor technician, nearly fell out of her seat. Her 4 eyes went wide as she stared at her screens. Every single display had turned red. Warning lights flashed everywhere. The noise was terrible. "Commander," she shouted over the alarms, "something is happening on the surface. Energy readings are going crazy. I have never seen anything like this in my entire career." Jumped from his chair and ran to her station. His claws made clicking sounds on the metal floor as he moved. "Show me everything, now." Myra pressed several buttons, and a large holographic image appeared above the central console. What they saw made everyone in the room stop breathing. Across the entire planet below, massive columns of white light were shooting up into the sky. They came from everywhere, from the big cities with their tall buildings, from small villages in the mountains, from ships sailing on the oceans. From everywhere humans lived, the light rose like pillars connecting Earth to the heavens. The light was so bright that the station's cameras had to adjust themselves. Even then, looking at it hurt their eyes. Had served in 3 wars and had seen weapons that could destroy entire moons, but he had never seen anything like this. "What is causing this?" he demanded. "Is it a weapon? Are they under attack?" "I do not know, Commander. The energy signature does not match anything in our databases. It is not nuclear. It is not plasma. It is not anything we have names for." The phenomenon lasted exactly 47 seconds. Counted each one, his heart's beating fast in his chest. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the light disappeared. The alarms continued to wail, but now for a different reason. "Commander," Myra said, her voice shaking, "the humans are gone." "What do you mean gone? Dead?" "No, sir. Gone. Vanished. There are no human life signs anywhere on the planet. 8 billion people have simply disappeared." Felt cold despite the warm temperature of the station. He ordered a full scan of the planet, then another, then a third. Each scan told the same impossible story. The humans had ceased to exist on there. But everything else remained. Their cities still stood. Their cars sat on the roads. Their planes hung frozen in the sky before crashing down without pilots. Food sat on tables, still warm. Television screens showed programs to empty rooms. Dogs barked and howled at doors that would never open again. Cats wandered through streets where their owners would never walk again. In hospitals, machines beeped beside empty beds. In schools, books lay open on desks with no students to read them. In homes across the world, lives had been interrupted in the middle of the most ordinary moments. Someone had been brushing their teeth. Someone had been kissing their child good night. Someone had been laughing at a joke they would never finish hearing. All gone, all 8 billion of them, in 47 seconds. Immediately sent an emergency message to the Galactic Council. Within hours, ships from dozens of species were racing toward Earth. Within days, representatives from 37 civilizations had gathered to discuss what everyone was calling the greatest mystery in the history of the galaxy. The council chamber was filled with beings of all shapes and sizes. Some had wings, some had tentacles, some floated in special tanks of liquid, some existed partially in dimensions that others could not see, but all of them shared the same expression of confusion and fear. Ambassador of the spoke first. She was a beautiful creature with wings that glowed like moonlight. Her voice was soft but carried across the entire chamber. "This is clearly an act of war against a developing species. Someone has taken the humans. We must find out who and demand their return." "With great respect," replied Counselor of the Empire. "Why should we care?" He was massive, nearly 3 times the size of a human with gray skin as tough as armor. The humans were insignificant. They had no advanced technology. They held no strategic territories. They were not members of the Council. Why would anyone waste resources to kidnap an entire species of primitives? Many in the chamber nodded at his words. It was true. Humans had been considered unimportant. They were too young, too weak, too far from the center of galactic civilization to matter. But High Scholar of the Ashanti Collective raised one of her many limbs for attention. Her species was ancient, almost as old as the stars themselves, and known for their wisdom. "Perhaps someone saw something in the humans that we did not. I have studied their history. They are a strange species. They breed quickly. They adapt to any environment, and their technology was improving at a rate that should not have been possible." "You think they were a threat?" asked another counselor. "I think they were potential, the kind of potential that makes certain powers nervous." The debate went on for weeks. Search parties were sent to every corner of known space. Diplomats made inquiries to every civilization, including those that the Council did not trust, but no answers came. No one claimed responsibility. No ransom demands arrived. The humans had simply vanished like smoke in the wind. Some said it was a natural disaster, some kind of cosmic event that no one understood. Others whispered about ancient powers waking from long sleep. A few suggested that the humans had somehow done this to themselves, perhaps a scientific experiment gone wrong. After 3 months of searching and finding nothing, the Galactic Council made an official declaration. Humanity was extinct. Their disappearance would be recorded as one of the great tragedies of galactic history, filed alongside thousands of other species that had vanished over the millions of years since the first civilizations rose among the stars. Earth was declared a protected zone, a memorial to a species that had showed promise but had been lost before they could fulfill it. Automated systems kept some of their machines running for a while, but eventually those too fell silent. The cities began to crumble. Plants grew through cracks in the concrete. Animals reclaimed the spaces that humans had built. And the galaxy moved on. New wars started and ended. New discoveries were made. New species joined the Council while old ones faded away. Earth became a footnote in history books, visited occasionally by researchers or tourists who wanted to see what the lost humans had built. Everyone agreed that it was sad. Everyone agreed that it was mysterious. But everyone also agreed that there was nothing to be done about it. What they did not know, what they could not possibly have imagined, was that far across the galaxy, in places no Council ship had ever traveled, 8 billion humans were very much alive. And they were very, very angry. Humans disappeared overnight. Part 2, The Long Silence. 73 years had passed since the night the humans vanished. The galaxy had changed in many ways during those years. Old empires had fallen and new ones had risen. Wars had been fought over territory and resources. Peace treaties had been signed and broken. Species that had been enemies became friends, while former allies turned against each other. Time moved forward as it always does, and the memory of humanity faded like an old photograph left in the sun. Earth still orbited its yellow star, but it was no longer a living world. Nature had reclaimed everything. Forests grew where cities once stood. Rivers flowed freely without dams to hold them back. Animals wandered through the ruins of human civilization, making homes in buildings that were slowly falling apart. Vines climbed the walls of skyscrapers. Trees pushed through the floors of shopping malls. The planet was beautiful in a sad, lonely way. The Galactic Council had turned Earth into a nature preserve of sorts. Visitors were allowed, but they had to follow strict rules. No taking artifacts, no disturbing the wildlife, no settling on the surface. Earth was a monument to a dead species, nothing more. Doctor was one of the few people who still cared about the humans. She was a young researcher, barely 90 years old, which was young for her species. Her wings were the color of pale silver, and her eyes held a curiosity that her teachers had long ago stopped trying to discourage. While other researchers studied living civilizations, had devoted her life to the dead ones. And among all the extinct species she had studied, humans fascinated her the most. "You are wasting your time," her mentor had told her many times. "You cannot understand a people by looking at their broken buildings and rusted machines. The humans are gone. Focus on the living." But could not let go. There was something about humanity that pulled at her mind like a hook pulling at a fish. She had read their books, studied their art, listened to their music. She had walked through their empty cities and stood in their abandoned homes, and everywhere she looked, she found the same thing. Hope, determination, the refusal to give up even when everything seemed lost. Human history was filled with stories of impossible victories, wars they should have lost but somehow won, disasters they should not have survived but somehow did, challenges that should have destroyed them but somehow made them stronger. Over and over again, humans had faced extinction and refused to accept it. So why had they simply disappeared without a fight? That question haunted. It made no sense. Everything she knew about humans told her that they would never go quietly. They would struggle. They would resist. They would leave some sign, some message, some proof that they had not simply given up. She was thinking about this as she walked through the ruins of what had once been called the museum in a city called Washington. The building had partially collapsed, but many of its treasures remained inside, protected from the weather by fallen walls that had created a kind of accidental shelter. Moved carefully through the debris, her scanner in hand cataloging items that previous researchers had missed. Old paintings, ancient weapons, machines whose purposes she could only guess at. Each item told a small story about the people who had made it. She was examining a statue of a human holding a book when her scanner made an unusual sound. The device had detected something hidden inside the base of the statue, something that was still producing energy after 73 years. With trembling hands, carefully opened a small panel that had been cleverly disguised as part of the stone. Inside, she found a device no larger than her palm. It was made of metal she did not recognize, covered in symbols she could not read, and on its surface, numbers were counting down. The countdown was almost at zero. Hearts began to race. She had found something, something the humans had hidden before they vanished, something that had been waiting all this time. 3, 2, 1. The device let out a single pulse of energy that traveled faster than light itself, reaching every corner of the galaxy in an instant. And then everything changed. Across the galaxy, in the empty spaces between stars where no civilization had ever traveled, reality itself began to tear open. 500,000 holes appeared in the fabric of space, each one glowing with the same white light that had appeared above Earth 73 years ago. And from each hole came a ship. They were enormous. The smallest was the size of a dreadnought, the largest warship in the known galaxy. The largest were so big that they had their own gravity, their own weather systems, their own cities inside them. They appeared in perfect formation around every major power in the galaxy, surrounding the of the council species like wolves surrounding sheep. Stood frozen in the ruins of the museum, watching through a broken window as ships appeared in Earth's sky. They hung there like metal mountains, blocking out the sun. More ships than she could count. More ships than she had ever seen in one place. Then every communication device in the galaxy activated at once. Every screen lit up. Every speaker crackled to life. Every neural interface received the same message. It came in perfect translations for every known language, and it came from a voice that spoke with absolute certainty. People of the galaxy, This is Admiral Brooks of the United Earth Expeditionary Fleet. Legs gave out beneath her. She sat down hard on the dusty floor, her wings pressed flat against her back. 73 years ago, our people were taken from our. We have spent those years searching for those responsible. We have traveled farther than your scientists believe possible. We have discovered technologies your researchers cannot imagine. We have built alliances with species your explorers have never met. We have grown strong. We have remembered who we are. And now, we have returned. The voice paused, and in that pause, imagine she could feel the entire galaxy holding its breath. We come not as conquerors, but as seekers of justice. Those who took us will answer for their crime. Those who stand with them will share their fate. Those who aid us will find humanity to be a generous friend. The choice is yours. Another pause. Then the voice spoke one final time, and there was something in it that made shiver despite herself. Not anger, not hatred, something worse, something colder. The long silence is over. We are home. The message ended. For a long moment nothing happened. The ships hung motionless in the sky. The galaxy seemed frozen in shock. Then's communication device exploded with activity. Emergency messages from the Council, panicked calls from research stations, military channels going crazy with reports of from 100 different worlds. The humans had returned. After 73 years of silence, after being declared extinct, after being forgotten by most of the galaxy, they had come back, and they had brought 500,000 ships with them. Looked up at the massive vessels filling the sky, and thought about all the times her mentor had told her to stop studying the dead. She thought about all the researchers who had dismissed her work as pointless. She thought about how wrong they had all been. The humans were not extinct. They had never been extinct. They had simply been waiting. And now the waiting was over. Humans disappeared overnight. Part 3, The Reckoning. The Galactic Council was in chaos. Representatives from every major species had gathered in the Great Chamber, shouting at each other, demanding answers that no one had. Security forces had been placed on highest alert. Fleets were being mobilized across the galaxy. Fear spread like a disease through every communication channel. 500,000 ships. The number kept being repeated over and over, as if saying it enough times might make it easier to understand. 500,000 ships had appeared from nowhere, surrounding every significant world in the galaxy. The combined military forces of the entire council did not equal that number. And they were human ships. The species everyone had written off as dead. The primitives who had barely mastered fusion power. The insignificant creatures who had been dismissed and forgotten. They had returned with a fleet larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ambassador of the was the first to establish contact with the human fleet. She had argued for humanity's protection 73 years ago when they first vanished. Perhaps they would remember that. Her image appeared on the bridge of the command ship Resolute, where Admiral Brooks stood watching the stars through a viewport the size of a football field. Brooks was not what it expected. She had studied humans before the vanishing. She remembered them as soft, fragile creatures with short and limited strength. This man was different. His hair was gray, his face was lined with years, but his eyes held something that made her uncomfortable. They were the eyes of someone who had seen terrible things and had decided to become terrible in return. Admiral Brooks, she said carefully, I am Ambassador. I want you to know that I advocated for your species when you disappeared. I pushed for a full investigation. I believed you deserved protection. Brooks studied her for a long moment. I remember your name, Ambassador. We kept records of everything that happened after we were taken. We know who spoke for us and who dismissed us. He paused. You have nothing to fear from humanity. Felt some of the tension leave her body, but only some. Then perhaps you can explain what is happening. Where have your people been for 73 years? Who took you? And why have you returned with such overwhelming force? Brooks gestured to Captain Diana, who stood nearby monitoring tactical displays. She nodded and began transmitting files to the ambassador's ship. "You are receiving evidence," Brooks said. "Video recordings, testimony from survivors, documents recovered from enemy computers, everything you need to understand what happened to us." His assistant began reviewing the files, and within seconds his face went pale. He turned to her with horror in his eyes. "Ambassador, these recordings show humans being processed through some kind of sorting facility. They are being separated by age, physical condition, genetic markers. The facility appears to be in design." They could not hide her shock. The hegemony was a reclusive but powerful civilization on the far edge of the galaxy. They rarely interacted with other species and had treaties of non-aggression with the Council. "That is impossible. They would never risk such an action." "They believed no one would notice," Brooks said. His voice was calm, but there was ice beneath the surface. 8 billion humans were transported across the galaxy to territory. We were divided among more than 100 worlds. Some were sent to breeding facilities, where they were forced to produce children who would be raised as servants. Others were sent to labor camps, where they worked until their bodies broke. Others were used for medical experiments. He stopped speaking. For a moment, the only sound was the soft hum of the ship's systems. "For 30 years we were slaves," Brooks continued. "We were treated worse than animals. Our families were separated. Our children were taken from us. Our old and sick were disposed of when they could no longer work. We were given new names, new numbers, stripped of everything that made us who we were." Felt sick. She had lived for nearly 2 centuries and had seen many terrible things, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. "How did you escape?" "We did what humans always do when we are pushed to our limits. We fought back." A small smile crossed Brooks's face, though it held no warmth. "They made a mistake. They thought that breaking our bodies would break our spirits. They did not understand that humans become more dangerous when we have nothing left to lose." He waved his hand, and a holographic display appeared, showing a timeline of events. It started small, secret meetings, hidden messages. We learned their language, their technology, their weaknesses. We made contact between camps. We built networks. We stole weapons and tools, and when we were ready, we rose up. Everywhere, all at once. On every world where humans were held, we attacked. The display showed images of human soldiers fighting through facilities, freeing prisoners, capturing ships. The rebellion lasted 3 years. We suffered terrible losses. Millions died fighting for freedom. But in the end, we won. We took their ships, their technology, their knowledge, and then we did something they never expected. "What?" asked, though she was almost afraid to hear the answer. "We left. We took everything we had captured and we traveled beyond the edge of known space. We found species the Council has never met, civilizations in regions your explorers have never reached. We made alliances. We traded knowledge. We built. For 40 years we built." Brooks spread his arms, gesturing at the massive ship around them. 500,000 ships, each one designed by human engineers using technology from a dozen different species. Each one crewed by humans who grew up hearing stories about Earth, about the home that was taken from us. Each one carrying soldiers who have trained their entire lives for this moment. Understood now. This was not an invasion. This was something far more dangerous. This was a species that had suffered beyond imagination and had used that suffering as fuel for something unprecedented. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. "Justice," Brooks replied. "We will present our evidence to the Galactic Council. We will demand that they surrender those responsible for our enslavement. We will ask for official recognition of what was done to us and compensation for the survivors." "And if they refuse?" Brooks's expression did not change. "Then we will take our justice ourselves. The galaxy can watch. The galaxy can judge. The galaxy can even try to stop us. But we have waited 73 years for this moment, Ambassador. Nothing will turn us away now. Knew she should argue. She should talk about diplomacy, about process, about the dangers of vigilante justice. But looking into the eyes of the man who had led his people through hell and back, she found she had no words. "I will convey your message to the council," she said finally. "I hope, for everyone's sake, that this can be resolved peacefully." "So do I," Brooks said. "Humanity has had enough of war. We want to live in peace, to take our place among the stars. But we will never again allow ourselves to be victims. Never again will we be taken in the night. Never again will our children be stolen from their parents. If war is the price of ensuring that, then we will pay it. They will learn what 8 billion people with nothing to lose are capable of." The communication ended, and Captain Diana turned to her admiral. "Do you think they will believe us?" she asked. "Do you think the council will help?" Brooks watched the distant stars through the viewport. Somewhere out there, they were preparing for what was coming. They had no idea what they were about to face. "Some will help, some will not, it does not matter." He straightened his uniform and turned toward the tactical center. "Set course for Prime. Signal all ships to follow. It is time to finish what we started." The largest fleet in galactic history began to move, and the stars themselves seemed to tremble at what was coming. Humans disappeared overnight. Part 4, The Storm. High Praetor had ruled the hegemony for 200 years. In that time, he had conquered 17 species, expanded his territory to cover nearly a tenth of the galaxy, and built a military force that made even the Galactic Council nervous. He had never known fear. He had never experienced defeat. Now, standing in his war room surrounded by his generals, he felt both for the first time. The reports coming from the border were impossible to believe. 500,000 human ships were approaching space. 500,000. The number was absurd. It was more ships than they had built in their entire history. It was more ships than the Galactic Council had in all their fleets combined. And they were crewed by the same humans that they had kidnapped, enslaved, and broken for 3 decades. "How is this possible?" demanded, his 4 arms slamming against the table. "They were primitives. They could barely leave their own planet when we took them. How could they build such a fleet?" General, his most trusted military advisor, shook his head. "We do not know, High Praetor. Our intelligence suggests they made contact with species beyond the galactic rim, civilizations we have never encountered. They traded knowledge, combined technologies. What they have built is unlike anything in our databases." "Then we will destroy them. We destroyed their resistance once before. We will do it again." The general hesitated. "High Praetor, our simulations suggest that a direct confrontation would result in our complete defeat. Their ships are faster, more maneuverable, and better armed than ours. Their weapons can penetrate our strongest shields, and their numbers are simply overwhelming." Felt his rage building. He was the High Praetor. He had built an empire on the bones of those who him. He would not be threatened by a species of slaves. "Then we will call for aid. The Galactic Council will not allow such aggression. They will send their fleets to support us." Another advisor stepped forward, her voice quiet. "The Council has already responded to human communications. They have seen the evidence of what we did to the humans. The kidnapping, the breeding camps, the labor facilities. High Praetor, they are calling for an investigation. Several members have already condemned our actions. Evidence can be faked, records can be altered. Some of that evidence came from our own files, High Praetor, files we believed were secure." The room fell silent. Looked around at his generals, his advisors, the commanders who had followed him through 2 centuries of conquest. For the first time, he saw doubt in their eyes. "What do the humans want?" he asked finally. "They have sent a list of demands. They want the surrender of all officials involved in the human enslavement program. They want official acknowledgement of what was done. They want compensation for survivors. and they want access to records to identify any humans who may still be in our territory. And if we refuse, they say they will take what they want by force. Straighten to his full height, towering over everyone in the room. Then let them come. We will show these humans what happens to those who challenge the hegemony. Mobilize every ship. Activate every defense platform. Call in every reserve. We will meet them at the border and crush them. The orders went out. Within hours, the largest fleet ever assembled was moving toward the border. 12,000 warships, 3 million soldiers, orbital defense platforms capable of cracking planets, everything the hegemony had built over centuries of warfare. They expected the humans to meet them at the border. They expected a battle. They did not expect what actually happened. Captain Samuel commanded the scout vessel Pathfinder, one of the smallest ships in the human fleet. His job was to observe and report, not to fight. But as his ship monitored the fleet massing at the border, he received orders that made him smile. All ships, this is Admiral Brooks, execute Operation Homecoming. Samuel broadcast a single message on open channels. We are not here to fight your fleet. And then, before they could respond, the human fleet vanished. Not retreated, vanished. Their engines worked on principles that scientists did not understand, allowing them to jump through space in ways that should have been impossible. One moment, 500,000 ships were facing the border fleet. The next moment, they were gone. They reappeared above Prime. Not in orbit, in the atmosphere. Massive landing ships descended through the clouds, their shields absorbing the defensive fire from ground batteries like water-absorbing stones. Anti-aircraft weapons that should have torn them apart barely scratched their hulls. Missiles that should have destroyed them were knocked aside by invisible barriers. The ships landed in the capital city, in the industrial districts, near the military command centers. Doors opened, and human soldiers poured out by the tens of thousands. They did not attack civilians. They did not burn buildings or destroy infrastructure. Their movements were precise, surgical, targeted. They knew exactly where to go and exactly what to capture. Years of intelligence gathering had given them complete maps of every important facility on the planet. General Price led the assault on the High Praetor's palace. She had been born in a labor camp, had watched her mother die from overwork when she was 12 years old, had escaped during the rebellion, and had spent every day since preparing for this moment. But she did not let hatred control her. She had orders: capture, not kill; justice, not revenge. Her soldiers moved through the palace with terrifying efficiency. Guards fought back, but they were outmatched. Human weapons were better. Human armor was stronger, and human soldiers had spent decades training for exactly this kind of operation. Within 2 hours, the palace was secured. Walked into the throne room and found surrounded by her soldiers, his own guards either dead or surrendered. The High Praetor looked at her with contempt. You think this changes anything? You think capturing me will make you safe? My people will never stop fighting. We will hunt you across the galaxy. We will make you regret ever returning. Studied him calmly. She thought about her mother. She thought about the years of suffering. She thought about how easy it would be to pull the trigger and end this creature who had caused so much pain. Instead, she holstered her weapon. You are under arrest for crimes against humanity. You will be taken to a neutral location where you will stand trial before representatives of the Galactic Council. Evidence will be presented. Witnesses will testify. And when you are found guilty, you will be punished according to galactic law. Laughed, a harsh sound like metal scraping against metal. You think the Council will support this invasion. You have attacked a sovereign territory. You have violated 100 treaties. The galaxy will condemn you. The galaxy will watch the evidence, replied. They will see videos of processing centers where humans were sorted like livestock. They will hear testimony from survivors of your breeding camps. They will read documents showing that you knew exactly what you were doing and did it anyway. And when they have seen everything, they will not condemn us. They will wonder how they failed to notice for 73 years. She gestured to her soldiers, "Take him." Across Prime, the same scene repeated itself. Military commanders captured, government officials arrested, facilities secured, records seized. The operation lasted less than 12 hours, and when it was over, the hegemony had effectively ceased to exist as a military power. The fleet that had gathered at the border rushed back to defend but by the time they arrived, it was already over. Human ships surrounded the planet, but they did not attack the returning vessels. Instead, Admiral Brooks broadcast another message. "People of your leaders have been arrested for crimes against humanity. They will face trial, justice will be done, but we have no quarrel with ordinary citizens. Lay down your weapons and you will not be harmed. Continue to fight and you will be defeated. The choice is yours." One by one, the ships powered down their weapons and surrendered. Captain Diana stood beside Admiral Brooks on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the surrender unfold. "We did it," she said quietly. "After everything, we actually did it." Brooks nodded slowly. His face showed no joy, no triumph, only a deep, tired relief. "The hard part is not over. Now comes the trial. Now comes convincing the galaxy that what we did was necessary. Now comes the long process of healing." He looked down at the conquered world below. "But yes, we did it. We came home, and no one will ever take us again." Humans Disappeared Overnight Part 5, The New Dawn. The trial lasted 3 months. It was held on a space station in neutral territory, far from both human and space. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy attended. Cameras broadcast every moment to billions of viewers across the stars. The Galactic Council had agreed to oversee the proceedings, though many of its members were clearly uncomfortable with the situation. The humans had invaded sovereign territory. They had captured government officials by force. They had ignored diplomatic channels and taken justice into their own hands. By the letter of galactic law, they were criminals. But then the evidence began. Video after video showed the horrors of what they had done. Processing facilities where humans were examined, tagged, and sorted like animals. Breeding camps where women were forced to produce children who were taken away at birth. Labor camps where workers died by the thousands, their bodies dumped into mass graves. Medical facilities where living humans were used for experiments too terrible to describe. Survivor after survivor took the stand and told their stories. An old man who had watched his wife and children taken to different camps, never to see them again. A young woman born in captivity who had never known freedom until the rebellion. A soldier who had found the bodies of his parents in a mass grave while liberating a labor world. The galaxy watched in horror. High Praetor and 46 other officials sat in the accused section, surrounded by guards. At first, they had been defiant, claiming that the evidence was fabricated, that the humans were lying. But as the testimony continued, as the documents piled up, as the truth became undeniable, their defiance crumbled. Some tried to blame others. Some claimed they were only following orders. Some said nothing at all, staring at the floor as the weight of their crimes pressed down upon them. When the verdicts came, no one was surprised. Guilty, all of them. Guilty of kidnapping, enslavement, torture, murder, and countless other crimes. The sentences varied, but the harshest punishments went to those most responsible, and 17 others were sentenced to life imprisonment on a barren asteroid colony, where they would live out their remaining years in isolation, stripped of all power and comfort. The hegemony itself was dissolved. Its territory was divided among neighboring species who agreed to allow international observers to ensure that nothing like this ever happened again. Reparations were ordered, though everyone knew that no amount of resources could truly compensate for what had been lost. But the trial did something more important than punish the guilty. It forced the galaxy to confront an uncomfortable truth. They had operated their enslavement program for over 70 years. They had transported 8 billion humans across multiple systems. They had built camps and facilities that required enormous resources. And somehow, no one had noticed. No one had investigated. No one had asked questions. Some species had even traded with the during this time, exchanging goods and technology without ever wondering where the hegemony's sudden wealth was coming from. Some had heard rumors and looked the other way. Some had simply decided that whatever was happening in space was not their problem. The humans made sure everyone remembered this. Admiral Brooks addressed the Galactic Council on the final day of the trial. He stood at the podium, looking older than his years, carrying the weight of everything his people had suffered and everything they had done to come back. 73 years ago, he began, my people were taken from our home. We were dismissed as primitive, insignificant, too weak to matter. The galaxy barely noticed when we disappeared. The galaxy declared us extinct and moved on. He paused, looking around the chamber at representatives from dozens of species. Some looked ashamed. Some looked defiant. Some simply looked tired. Today we stand as equals among you, not because you invited us, not because you helped us, because we fought our way back. We built 500,000 ships in secret. We trained generations of soldiers who never forgot their purpose. We did this because we are human and humans do not surrender. Humans do not forget, and humans never stop fighting. The chamber was completely silent. We do not seek empire. We do not want to rule over you or take your territories. We want only to live in peace, to trade, to explore, to rebuild our and raise our children in safety. We want to be members of this community, partners in building a better galaxy. His voice hardened. But know this, if anyone in this galaxy ever again decides that humanity is easy prey, we will remind them of this day. We will remind them of the ships that came from nowhere. We will remind them that when you take everything from humans, you do not destroy us. You create something far more dangerous. You create survivors. He stepped back from the podium. And survivors always come back. The council voted later that day to offer humanity full membership. The vote was unanimous. In the months that followed, Earth began to heal. Ships brought humans home from across the galaxy, millions of people who had never seen their ancestral world. Cities were rebuilt, though never quite the same as before. New buildings rose beside the ruins of the old, creating a landscape that honored the past while building the future. The humans who returned were different from those who had been taken. Generations had been born and raised in captivity. They had grown up hearing stories about Earth, dreaming about a home they had never seen. Now they walked through forests that had grown where cities once stood, swam in oceans their grandparents had only seen in pictures, breathed air that had not been recycled through machines. Many wept, many laughed, many simply stood in silence, trying to understand that they were finally truly free. Captain Diana brought Admiral Brooks to the museum, or what was left of it. The building had been partially restored, and Doctor, the researcher who had triggered humanity's return, was waiting for them. "This is where it started," Diana said, standing beside the statue where the countdown device had been hidden. "Someone knew this would happen. Someone planted that device before the vanishing." Brooks nodded slowly. "We found references in old records. A group of scientists figured out what was happening in the first moments of the attack. They did not have time to stop it, but they had time to hide that device. They knew we would come back. They gave us a way to announce our return." Stepped forward, her silver wings folded against her back. "I have spent my entire career studying your species. I thought I understood you, but I never imagined anything like this." Brooks smiled, the first real smile Diana had seen on his face in years. "Humanity is full of surprises. That is perhaps our greatest strength. No matter how many times the galaxy counts us out, we find a way to prove them wrong." Outside the museum, Children were playing in the grass that had grown over the ancient streets. Human children and children and children from a dozen other species, all running and laughing together. The sound of their voices echoed through the rebuilt city. "What happens now?" asked. "Now we live," Brooks replied. "We build, we grow. We take our place among the stars and show the galaxy what humanity can do when we are not fighting for survival." He looked up at the sky, where human ships patrolled alongside vessels from allied species. "We have earned this peace. Now we must prove we deserve it." In schools across human space, children learned the story of the vanishing and the return. They learned that their ancestors had been stolen in a single night and had spent 73 years clawing their way back. They learned that the galaxy had declared them extinct, and that 500,000 ships had proven the galaxy wrong. Most importantly, they learned the words that had sustained their people through decades of darkness. The motto that had been whispered in labor camps and shouted in liberation battles and carved into the hulls of every ship in the human fleet. "We remember, we return, we endure." The humans had come home, and they would never leave again.